Freddy Murre,
Yes.
welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, sir.
But your name is not, is it Frederick or is it Freddy?
Freddy.
It is Freddy.
My
okay.
dad actually had the only option was Freddy.
Yeah.
People ask, is short for Frederick? Yeah, I don't want to lose one letter, so yeah, it's just Freddy.
Yeah, I have the same problem. Everybody calls me Robert, but my name is Robby.
There you go.
There you go.
Robby.
We have something in common.
We do.
It's a good start for the podcast.
It is extremely good start.
Yes, we both work security too.
Yes.
Where do you work?
I work at an organization that's called the Nordic Financial CERT. It is a non-profit organization. It's owned by the financial institutions in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. We serve about 200 or so financial institutions, so it's both banks, it's pension funds, it's insurance companies, it's basically anything that needs, a certificate or something from the government to run a financial institution.
Financial certificate, yeah.
Certificate, something. Sorry, I don't know what it is.
There's 200 of those in the Nordics?
Yeah, that's true. So there we serve basically, and we work as an ISAC. So basically that's a sharing community. So we help all our members analyze all their incidents, and then we share it through the community, but we also support with incident handling and stuff like that. So we primarily work on incident response. But we also support on anti-fraud and also on how to do intelligence well, and that's where I come in. That's sort of my specialty.
So you're Mr. Threat Intelligence for today.
Well, as you say, maybe yeah.
Maybe yeah. Well, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure that out at the end of this talk.
At the end of this talk, yeah. So what specifically do you work with on a day-to-day basis? What's your normal day like?
Okay, so my position basically is the Senior Threat Intel Analyst. And that's a mouthful, but basically I work mostly on the strategic side of the house. So that's more on the high level, more satellite view of incidents, and where I work mostly with threat actors and threats and risk assessment. No, not risk, but threat assessment as feedback into the risk assessment loop for our members. So I'm not a technical guy. I don't have technical education. So, please don't hold it against me. But yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah, I know.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah,
and
I know.
But basically what I do every day, and because we're speaking the same language here. So what I do every day is I support our members with RFIs, so request for information on incidents that has happened. But that's mostly on the threat actor level. What are they known for? How do they operate? What are their motivations, their intentions, capability, capacity? And then I make assessments, and I provide them, our members, with that information and that assessment. So that's basically what I do every day. So
awesome.
In long term, I create a threat assessment for the what we call a threat landscape report, and we're launching this on December 1st in 2021 for the 2022 cycle. And also do quarterly threat assessment, monthly, and any ad hoc questions our members have. So, as I said, I track the threat actors, and the rest of the incident response team, they track the malwares and the incidents and the indicators, etc. So we work together, but I don't do the technical side. No.
How many groups are you tracking? If you can say
that's actually not that many, because we are tracking groups that are interested in the finance sector.
They want money.
They want money. They want to steal information. They want to steal intellectual property, whatever it is that targets the finance sector. So we don't care about groups that are operating in South Asia. We don't care about groups that are working in North America. We care about those groups that are active in Europe, and mostly in Northern Europe. But as you know, most of these campaigns that we see are wide. So they hit North America, Europe, and maybe even Africa. So we need to track all those that are hitting our members and trying to breach our members' networks. Those are the other ones. So going back to your question, we're tracking about 10, 15 activity groups, if that makes sense, for finance sector in the Nordics, and also about the same number in anti-fraud specific groups that are working specifically on stealing money of customers of the finance sector. So we have about 30 groups. But there's a specialty team that works on anti-fraud, and a specialty team, me, that works on incident response group tracking.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. The title of the episode is a TI and IR. And I don't really know what that means. That's the first time I've ever heard, incident response. Everybody knows incident responses, but I never really thought of threat intelligence being a part of incident response.
Yeah, so threat intelligence, in that sense, we have cyber threat intelligence, so CTI. That's basically the theme that a lot of people use, and the acronym people use. The I part, the last letter, is the intelligence part, and that's where I come from the intelligence side. I come from the intelligence community. I worked with intelligence. So basically what I was hired for was to do intelligence. So we have all the technical knowledge. We have all the cyber side of the house. We do all the event tracking, the malware tracking, malware analysis, all those things we have. But what my boss was missing was that we need someone who can help us with building the knowledge of the cyber landscape, the threat landscape. So that's where I came in. So I bring to the house or to the table knowledge about how to do intelligence well, how to do it correct, how to track and trace your analysis so you can make sure that whatever you do, it's traceable and it's also provable. So you could go back and see, this is what I did, these are the data I found, these are also the sources I used, these are the assessment I used on the sources. And that means that's the basis for your analysis of saying the likelihood of something happening, or if you're saying your confidence level on your assessment. That's all part of the I of the CTI, the intelligence side. And quite frankly, when I joined into the CTI world, my impression was that everyone was using this cyber threat intelligence term, but it seemed like they were all doing cyber threat analysis or cyber threat data sharing or information sharing, but not necessarily intelligence. It serves a purpose for technical-minded people who speak the same language on technical analysis, sure. But the second you want to take that analysis and elevate it up to your manager, your boss's boss, the CISO, the C-suite as all, the chief risk officer, the CEO, or even to the board. Doing good analysis on technical level is probably going to miss the mark quite heavily. So my job basically is to translate all the incident data from incident response into a language of the business. And that's basically language of risk. So when I talk about threat intelligence and threat analysis, that goes into the risk equation where you have the threat. That's where I come in and I'll provide the threat analysis. Then you have the vulnerability that is probably somehow misused, and then you have some sort of consequence and time and etc. So depending on which model you use, if you use the FAIR model, or in Norway we have I think it's called a 5832. So there's different models of risk assessment, and all of them have the threat element. And that's where I think all the CTI or the intelligence analyst should focus their work and communicate well with.
How do you follow these groups? Do you actually, is it like reading reports from like the American vendors and stuff? Or you're collecting data obviously from here locally, all your members, but how do you put it all together?
Oh, that's basically a two-part question. So the sourcing is basically our primary source is 220 financial institutions in the Nordics. They report to us, or not report to us as we're not their boss.
Yeah,
they share with us. That's correct. Yeah. So they share all the data with us. So we have access to a lot of their data, their reporting. We speak with them every week, and they share data with an incidents, etc. And we help them analyze and also solve their issues. So that means that's our primary source.
So there's nobody else in the world that has a better overview of the banks.
So we can't buy that access. We can't buy that service and that knowledge. That's basically from my members, so basically from the horse's mouth. Yeah. We also have vendors, of course, and that's sort of the next stage. We have paid services from different vendors. We have services from your company as well. So we use all those sources that we can to build a picture. Our biggest probably source outside of our internal network is ISACs. So we share a lot with different, health certs and with power energy certs, with the telecommunications certs. And we're also part of what's called FS ISAC and FI ISACs. Those are two large ISACs that are focused on the financial sector and financial industry respectively. And we work quite heavily with then thousands of financial institutions in the world. So we share and communicate a lot of incidents and indicators and analysis. So that's our main sources. And then of course we have OSINT. And that's sort of what you mentioned in your question. We of course read all the reports. Everything that you can find online, we read every week. So that's basically a major part of my job is reading, reading, and putting it into context. How does that affect the financial sector in the Nordics? How does this affect specific members who have specific vendors that they are dependent on? When SolarWinds hit, when Exchange server vulnerability was both early this year, who of our members had on-prem solutions? Well, not many. So we were out there and communicating and sharing all that we could find and sharing with them and gathering all the data. So they had a up-to-date threat assessment and up-to-date indicator sharing continuously through MISP and other services that we have. Now that's first part of your question. How do we gather was one? How do we sort of connect everything? So I'm using a tool called Semantica. So it's a small tool, not known. That's mostly because it's used by mostly really large organizations with short acronyms around the world. But it's a linked sharding program on steroids. So it's helping me picking out all the relevant data. So it's once I put in the relevant data, so names of threat actors, IP addresses, names of malware, names of companies, names of vulnerability codes, CVE codes, etc. It basically just tells me, when I read a report, these are the things you have already tied into your analysis already, and then I can start adding more data and building a link chart, building timelines, and all of those things help me build analysis views. So do I want to look at the timeline to see what has happened when and who knew what at what time? Do I want to know which threat actors are working together on different campaigns over time? Do I want to see developments of malware and developments of TTPs? That basically MITRE table communicate, where we're sharing MITRE table overviews with our members so they can also use that data to analyze their ability to detect and then prioritize, for instance, where they should increase funding or buy new technology, etc. So all of these things are into gathering the data, how to do analysis, and then what the members use it for. And that was just one example of the MITRE table. Yeah.
Shit, your reports are probably so just spot on when you have all that data and you could just you just query it, you just ask, right? I guess.
So I have to build like everyone else and spend hours on each of the elements. But yearly we produce a yearly threat landscape report, which is 100 pages or so, and that contains about 10-15 of the most relevant threat actors to the finance sector on the incident response side. So trying to breach the networks of the financial institutions, not stealing money of the customers. That's more anti-fraud side. So that's basically doing 40 pages of analysis of the threat landscape, then 40 pages of all the threat actors, and then 40 pages of how in everything that's holy did we do this. So we're basically describing the intelligence process of how we gather data, how we analyze data, how we structure it, how we are using assessment words, and how the reader then can understand everything in the report. So that's for one purpose. That report is for TIBER. So TIBER is a EU or European specific test regime, if you will. TIBER is threat intelligence based ethical red teaming. So it's a framework of doing red teaming, but it's more than pen testing. It's more than trying to breach your systems. It's a complete scenario of a threat actor that is relevant, a threat actor from the report, and they emulate that threat actor to try and breach your systems, but they will also then continue the pivoting in the network. They will try and gain access to your domain controllers, then pawn or own your AD, so they can be able to do their actions on objective, which it might be stealing money, stealing your data, then dropping ransom, whatever the end goal would be. So that's the whole TIBER process. Our products are basically in the beginning when they're discussing what type of scenario should we build using which type of threat actors, targeting whatever critical function we have in our shop. So that's a specific bank that's discussing this and creating a white team. So usually I'm part of the white team, and then I'm discussing with them the threat landscape, the reality of what they will do and why. And then the vendor comes in and creates what's called a scenario. So that's what we call a TTI vendor, a targeted threat intel vendor. That vendor will analyze the shop, the member, the financial institution. They will do open source analysis and also do a lot of analysis internally to figure out what is the vulnerabilities that the member possesses. And then we combine the threat intelligence with the vulnerabilities so we can create a scenario. And that's basically threat intelligence based ethical red teaming, right? So we're basing on reality rather than saying, hey, this company have this cool dude who does these cool amazing things that are outside of what a threat actor would do. Then maybe it's irrelevant. It might be irrelevant because you're testing your defenses, but you need to test on your defenses on what's actually been done out there today and what might come tomorrow. Not was the cool kid on the block 2 years ago. That malware is sunk and done. You can't use that anymore. Every detection out there will trigger and fire on it. So yeah.
When you're tracking a threat actor, whatever, how do you know like what TTPs they use? You're just using it from incident data, like from live incidents that have happened, and you just figure out how they did it?
Yeah, so I don't do the building of the TTP, so the MITRE table, for instance. That's what the incident responders do. So they look at the data and they analyze the process, and then they say, hey, for initial access they did this, and for C2 they did this, and then they did some pivoting here, and then they build the whole MITRE table. And based on this, we combine it and look at what other vendors and other OSINT and other members have seen to try and look and compare to identify, is this part of a small cluster, a unique cluster, or a large cluster of incidents? And that's sort of the tricky part, right? Is this what we see now tied to a certain country or to a certain group? And then that means we need to really be, it's a Norwegian term, but we need to keep our tongue, in the right place so we don't chew it off or bite it, right? Yeah. So we just need to make sure that we're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Cool. So you literally take like a blank MITRE table, and then you look at an incident, you fill it out, and then you kind of like compare those MITRE tables for all these incidents, and you can figure out, okay, yeah, this group, whatever it is, it's going after these banks in these countries, and they're using these tech. Yeah.
And combine them, you have all the indicators. Indicators usually get triggered by other members or other FSISACs or ISACs that we share with, or OSINT community or our vendors. And there's some sort of tie-in through the indicators. Now, when we add the TTPs on top, the tactics and techniques, then we look at how are they moving, and does that look like something we've seen before? Because indicators can be copied. You can take a malware that someone else has used and you reuse it. You can sneak into someone's C2 system, like two countries have done to a Middle Eastern country, where they emulated that country. So in terms of indicators, you can look at, hey, this looks like a certain country. While in actual fact, if you look at what actually happened behind and how everything was structured, you might get indicators that, hey, this looks nothing like what we've seen before. The indicators are there, but the TTPs are different. Why is that? And that sort of gives you the clue that you need to do further analysis and create hypotheses and what we call creating indicators and looking for those indicators, updating those indicators. Now we're really into the analysis field, right? So this is intelligence analysis. You create hypotheses of whatever you see. You create indicators of different hypotheses to see, are we now seeing hypothesis 1, 2, or 5? What is it that we're seeing? Because one might be a hypothesis that this is country X. Another would be, no, this is country Y, and the third might be, well, no, this is actually the country we thought it was. Hypothesis Z, whatever the case might be. Those are three no hypotheses. So you then look at all the data, the IOCs, you look at all the TTPs, and then you look at what is similar, and then what you try to do is disprove what you saw, what you're seeing. So if you really think, no, this is country Z, but you think it might be X or Y, well, then you're looking for and trying to prove it,
through the data,
and disprove your initial hypothesis.
While we're there, attribution.
Attribution. Oh, that is a touchy subject.
Yeah, it still is. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Like, so nothing's changed in that.
Oh, no. Everything's the same. No, so I'm guessing what you're asking for, attribution, is it hard? Yes, it's hard. Is it something that everyone should do? No, it isn't. Do we do it? We try to stay clear. So the reason is we don't have enough insights into what's going on outside of the finance sector. So we do not know what McAfee do or Mnemonic do or Proofpoint do. They have their own data sets. They have their own collection bias. They see what they see, but we don't see what they see. They don't see what we see. And that means whatever they do of conclusions and reporting and saying, we assess it's likely that this might be country X with medium confidence. we don't see their data. So we have to be really careful when we say, well, this is a TA actor or a spider of some sort. We try to be really careful on doing that. However, when there's multiple sources saying the same thing that are from different data sets concluding the same thing, our level of confidence goes up. So we can say by low or medium confidence that we think that what we're seeing internally is the same thing that has been reporting externally. And that's where we try to be really clear and have a clear statement on it.
And that attribution, I mean, what do you do with all like since you have all this data and you can like literally prove like these things are happening and you know which group it is, where does that go? Do you send that to like here, police, just so you know, good luck, or do you share it like Europol, or like how does that process go?
So in first instance, we of course share with the members, and we share both the data and the reporting and the analysis that we do, and also the background, all the back data, all the stored analysis and data we have that we are basing it on. We share with our members through MISP and through other tools that we use. We also share with ISACs because we think that if we share with them, they can be protected tomorrow or now because they might be in the same storm that our members are. In terms of law enforcement, we do one of three things. We can share with members who have a really good connection with different both companies and law enforcement in other countries that we do not have access to. Okay. So think of Eastern European or former Russian states. There are other players involved that know these organizations out there better than we do. And also we work closely with the law enforcement in each country and of course with NC3s in all our countries. And we work also with Kripos.
Yeah.
So we share, Kripos is a Norwegian organ, but that's basically NC3 in Norway. So we share a lot with them and they share between different NC3s across Europe. And then you see activities where people get arrested. And that's, good days, I guess, for all of us.
Does that happen very often, though?
Sharing, yes. Arrests that we learn of that are tied to what we share, no.
You don't get that feedback loop,
no,
I guess.
not that feedback. But sometimes we know that, we were partaking in sharing data into that let's say the water pool, the Olympic water pool, it's a huge pool of water, and we poured our little cup in it. So basically we are a small part of a larger set of data, I guess.
That's very accurate, very clean set of data. They probably wish that everybody gave them the level of detail, that data that you provide, I guess.
Yeah, so we also have to be careful on what we share because of GDPR and stuff. So so we're also bound by that. So
the police have to, okay.
Yeah, so we can't share, customer data and data that are sensitive. We can share the data that is relevant for the case. So we do that in assessment in case by case.
Let me just throw it out there. What do you think is interesting these days? What's on top of your mind in this world you live in? Like, what's new? What's coming?
New, and well, two questions. Let's do the new first.
Yeah.
So new is not new, but there are huge changes in the ecosystem of organized crime groups. So 2-3 years ago, we had groups that were running their own operation. So they were pushing out their campaigns and their emails. They were scanning the computers, the list on their panel on all the targeted computers that were clicking on the links and then popping up on their screens and saying, hey, this is an interesting computer, etc. Then they were dropping first stage, second stage malware, and then they were running whatever end game they were doing, ransomware or stealing money or manipulating SWIFT data, whatever you have, whatever the case might be. Today, there are more specialized groups. What that means is a certain set of groups are running campaigns, and that's all they do. They do campaigns, they do the phishing, they do the first stage malware, which often is an info stealer, and then they start stealing all the data, and then that pops up in some sort of panel. It might be bought from you. So if I'm the guy who is running the campaign, you bought access to the campaign. You're saying, hey, I need 10,000 computers. I want to use this theme, COVID-19. I want to target this area or region or this type of emails, let's say all financial institutions or industries in the Nordics, whatever the case might be. And then you get it on your table, on your screen, or I get it. But both of us are like, yeah, this is cool. Now I can go into what we call an access broker. And that means we're selling access. That's a completely different threat actor, not relevant in the sense of they're breaking in, but they're providing a service. The service is, I have a web page or a database. You can log in and you can filter and say, hey, I want computers that are registered in a certain country, within a certain organization or type of organization. And then you can start filtering into what type of operating system, what type of language, all those things that you get from the info stealer. And then another third operator comes in, and that's those who are delivering the malware. Let's say a specific malware. And that might be a malware as a service as well. So you, again, if you're buying the service from me and from the malware operator, you can build and piecemeal your own campaign without even knowing how to set up a phishing campaign, how to run and operate the malware, how to run ransomware. You just buy services from 2 or 3 of these campaign as a service, and then from a malware as a service, and then ransomware as a service. Then you are, per definition, a threat actor. That's sort of skewing the landscape quite a bit, because then you did that one campaign and never to be seen again, but you're still a threat actor to many people. What we're trying to do is look at who's providing the service of the info stealers. If we can track their infrastructure, we know everything they do, independent, if that's a word, independent is the right word, of those who are buying services. So if there's 15,000 people who are buying services, we just need to track the infrastructure of the provider. And the same goes for the access broker. We can then figure out, all these computers with these IPs and locations in these organizations, we can then start warning them. We don't. That's other vendors that do that. And then, of course, those who are running malware as a service, they have specific setups and infrastructure. If we track the malware as a service operator and not the customer who's buying the service, then we don't have to track all the threat actors who are buying. We need to track those who are providing the malware as a service.
Yeah.
So that's shortening and limiting our resources, in the sense of we don't have to spend thousands of manpower hours to try and track all the threat actors and all the campaigns. We want to track those that are relevant to the finance sector in the Nordics, with the malwares that are used to actually try to penetrate the systems of our members. That's the key value. And making sure that our members as well are trying to defend themselves from the relevant threat actors, those who have them on their list, those who are part of their configuration files, whatever that might be. So that's sort of the gist.
Cool.
You had 2 questions. I don't
know. I got lost, but it was super awesome. They, Mandiant had some report about that, or some webinar, like the commodization of cybercrime. Like, right, it's and very specialized now.
Yeah, and there's also access broker analysis that came out just a week or so ago. So if you Google, access brokers, etc., there's a lot of information about it. But what's missing, I think, it's the understanding from vendors and everything, that they're mapping out the ecosystem has changed, where you have specialized service providers, and that's what we see.
That's what you have to track. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so much fun. It sounds fun. It sounds super interesting.
It is really fun and interesting, and that's the days are never the same. You're always working, always seeing, that was actually interesting, and because I get surprised all the time, and that's really fun.
Gotta kind of tip your hat, even though it's bad, but
yeah, right. And that's a confusing part where it's, that's bad, but that was cool.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
How did they do that? And then you go in and just, okay, so that's how they did it, and then you start sharing with the community, and everyone says, oh my heck, that's what everyone said, wow, is that possible? And so that's really, really awesome. So but that's outside of the technical side. That's more of the how they set everything up and how they were moving. So the SolarWinds incident is a beautiful example where everyone was guarding the gate bridge to the house, but then the plumber basically snuck in and changed the game. So supply chain is really, really a focus, it seems, in the world these days, just because of the Exchange vulnerability and SolarWinds. But these are recent examples. There are a multitude of examples across 10-15 years where threat actors have used and exploited supply chain, basically because their main targets are really heavily defended. So they go through what we call the path of the least resistance. They want to figure out, how can I break in without having to hammer the door. Yeah.
Cool. God, what else can I ask? Trends besides supply chain, is there any other big trends that you see, or is it the same stuff that we've been hearing for all the years?
I think that there's no large trends that are, from my perspective, because I've been seeing it for at least a year and a half. It was the change in ecosystem I spoke about. Another trend, of course, is how ransomware operators are changing the game continuously, but that's not a trend per se. So it's a continuously developing threat landscape, and that's what's the interesting part. But that also it creates a lot of issues, I guess, for defenders. They're always a step or two behind, and
that's why they're always asking for more money.
Yeah, right. So that's why they need vendors out there that are trying to be a step or two ahead. To try and help their customers to defend themselves in the sense of what's coming tomorrow. And that means they need a threat intel team that will be there and do analysis on future. What might happen? What are the key changes of the threat actors? What might be the next way they're doing things? What exploits might they try and why? Those elements, I think, are everything that can move and shift a vendor space, I guess, from being a data and information hoarder and saying this is threat intelligence over to doing actual threat intelligence where they're saying, adding value to the customer is this is what everyone is seeing, but these are the key elements that you should worry about, and these are the things we think you will see tomorrow. That's what then the customers can start buying the right technology. They can make changes to their skill sets internally. When we now see, let's say, a lot of organizations are moving from on-premise systems to cloud systems. That's a complete different ballgame in terms of defensive systems, knowledge of your security personnel, security architecture. All of those things change quite a bit. So if you haven't made sure that your employees and your technology stack matches or can latch on to cloud, then you probably missed the step, right? So those are the things that I think in terms of predicting trends and predicting what's going to happen, those were the things that should have been said and communicated by vendors a year ago. Even when this whole cloud thing was starting to get momentum. So in terms of what are the trends for me now, that's difficult because I think I'm too close to the tree these days. Or we can't see the forest because of the trees.
Because you're in there.
I basically think I can't even see the tree because I'm too close to the bark of the tree. So but I'm really deep into my 10-15 threat actors, and I'm looking into them and digging into all the fancy stuff that I can find. And then every once in a while I take a broader horizon look, talking to FSISAC and talking to our members and seeing, what do you guys think? What do you see? What are the trends you're worried about? Because they do the same things. And that dialogue, again, is really part of the intelligence process, again, having that good dialogue with your customers and figuring out what are their key questions, what are their key needs, and then providing value to those. That's where I guess I think I would hope the vendor space would move into. And I'm hoping by saying it's a trend that vendors should go there. Let's see if that works.
Yeah, they gotta find. You need to have babies, or we need more of you.
Yeah, right.
We need more of you.
Well, I'm not sure those will be pretty babies, but more babies nonetheless. Yeah.
By the way, when you go talk to like management and you present these things,
Sure.
I would assume that most of them, they don't necessarily care, like a manager, like C-level. They don't really care about the threat actors, but they're going to say, so what? What does this mean for me, right? What kind of dialogue do you usually have with those sort of?
Yeah. So. I need to break that down a couple of levels as well. So when you communicate with management or C-suite for that matter, communicating indicators and emails and how cool it was to dissect this malware, that's probably going to fall on, they're going to fall asleep. But they will. That's where you get the question, so what? Why should we care? And what can we do about it? Basically, what I've learned when I speak with higher-ups is they have some key questions. What is it that we need to care about and why? What do we have necessary capability and detection to deal with it should that happen to us today or tomorrow? If not, how long is it going to take? What is our exposure between then and from now and then until that's up and running? What is it that it's going to cost? And what are the key benefits? Those are the things I think intelligence part of any CTI program should be prepared to answer at a moment's notice. That's our key job. making sure that our decision maker knows what are the threats. If they hit us, do we have necessary capability to detect and deal with those? If not, what is it that we need to buy or build or train our staff to do? How long is that going to take, and how much is going to cost, right? So those are the key elements they really need answers to, and that should be short. It should be a one-pager, bullets, a lot of graphics and images, and clear and concise language. And that's where I think also when we talk about CTI, threat intelligence and incident response, often incident responders are asked, can you come and brief the board? And that's where I think we're getting into a lot of trouble, because it's all about the cool things you found on the malware analysis or the C2 analysis or the log analysis, and then you're mapping out the timeline what happened, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, so what? And that's where we get into the whole basis of your question, right? You need to be able to say, this is how it happened. That's a descriptive analysis. This is what happened. That's a descriptive. Then you have the how it happened, and that's another level of type of analysis. Then it's the so what. What does this mean for us? And then what might the future look like, which is more predictive analysis. Most of the time we're on the what happened, and sometimes of how it happened. But seldomly we go into the so what or even the predictive space, basically because we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do doing structure analytical techniques. And that's a specific subfield of intelligence, which is called SATs. So structure analytical techniques. That's where we spend a little more time on analyzing what happened and how it happened, and then based on this, what might happen in the future, or what does this mean for us, our vulnerabilities, our key assets. How does this influence our business and how to operate in the future? Those are the elements that are more relevant for the higher-ups in the C-suite. Less relevant, perhaps, down in the keyboard level when you're doing analysis or you're in the SOC. But those are two different customers or stakeholders, if you will.
Why don't more companies have threat intelligence teams?
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's really expensive to have a person like me.
Yeah.
However, no, but
yeah, I see that.
In all fairness, I am one guy who does the intelligence side of the house, but I work as 2 or 3 people, right? So I do the collection, I do the analysis, and I do the reporting, and I do all the presentations. So basically, that would be 3 people. But that means I'm doing a job for 3 people. I'm also then an expensive person to have, simply because what is it I'm producing? I'm not producing X amount of indicators. I'm not producing X amount of reports. I'm not producing X amount of phone calls, etc. You can't measure all the things that we do, simply because we do analysis. So as I said maybe 10-15 minutes ago, is I read a lot. You can measure everything that I read for me to be able to do the analysis and then do the reporting with a high or medium level of confidence. So having people that are I see a lot of incidents where you have metrics, and the managers are looking at how many phone calls did you take, how many emails did you reply to, how many indicators did you work on, how many emails did we stop. Those are easy to understand for a manager or the boss's boss, etc. I understand that, but when we talk about intelligence, that's not that measurable in that sense. Also, the key value is, if I provide intelligence, did we do something with it? Did we block or turn something on of our defensive systems? And what was the effect of that? That's the high value discussions you should have with your stakeholders. The low end, the low-hanging fruit, the easy but also low value, is when you do the numbers. You say, how many hours did you spend? How many malwares did you analyze? How many emails did you stop? Those are low-hanging fruits, but also low value. When we talk about how much money have we saved based on the intelligence that's been produced, that's the high and key value you should focus on. That means you're spending more time on less metricable, if that's even a word, measurable, I guess is the right word, things you do, but you also have high value in the sense of communicating based on these 3 reports you received in the last quarter, you made these changes to your defensive posture, which then blocked more effectively these malwares and these campaigns, which would have dropped a ransomware or tried to break into the SWIFT system, because we are tracking these actors and these campaigns, and these are the things that happen at other customers who didn't do what you did. You did a good job, boss, because you did you made decisions based on the products we delivered. That's the value and the discussion you should have when you're talking about, why aren't people having CT analysts? So in the intelligence side of a CT analyst, I think it's a new field. Now we're getting into basically answering your question, I guess. It's a new field. It's also a topic which have less knowledge. It's mostly technical people that have been given the CTI role. That means they don't have the analysis skills, I guess, or even knowledge. And if they do, they've probably done let's say the SANS CTI course, where they say on one half of the course is analysis and more of the analysis side, and one half is the technical, and they try to merge it together. They're scraping their surface on both of them, not going deep.
Yeah.
No, so I would suggest, if you really, really want to know about analysis, go to and do the SATs, do the structured analytical techniques. And that means not reading a book. You can buy the book. It's about, $100. It's online, Structured Analytical Techniques by Pearson. Or you can do the course. And I would really highly recommend the 2-week course. It's divided into a 3-day, 5-day, and a 3-day over a couple of months. So you're not away from work 20 days. Yeah. Or 10 days, but that course is actually giving you hands-on experience. And I'm actually part of the team that is helping them building the cyber scenario. And we're going to use SolarWinds. We're going to use the pipeline in the US. We're going to use Exchange vulnerabilities. Really high level. You can do analysis on either low level or high level depending on your job, but still do analytical techniques, which is the hard part of doing analysis. That's where you go into the what happened, how did it happen, so what, and predictive analysis. You go through all those elements, all those different techniques.
Do you believe that because not every company can, like you said before, first of all, you're not there's not many of you, so not every company can hire you. Yeah. And maybe it is more efficient for somebody like NF-CERT or something like Mnemonic, or like that one organization can do it for many. Yeah, I mean, you were just doing it for finance, so that's just for finance. But there is also CREF-CERT, right? There's different. Yeah. Maybe it's better that, or maybe that's the only way to do it, is to have smaller amount of organizations doing really high quality work and giving that intelligence to. Sure. So that every company doesn't need to have a you per se, but they need to have somebody that can help you figure out the so what. Yeah. Feed you information.
And I want to iterate one thing. I said, you asked, why aren't we seeing more CTI people? And I said, because they can't hire people like me because we're expensive. The reason people like me are expensive is that because there are not many of us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I just want to iterate that. So, it's not because it's me. It's just because,
But it's because it's you too, though.
Yeah, it is. So joking aside, I think that when we talk about how we can move forward, basically. How can we make sure that when we have organizations like NF-CERT or like yourself as a vendor, you're sitting basically in the center of the web, or a real large portion of the web. And that means you can you can produce intelligence for more recipients instead of sitting inside one organization, which are then paying for that person to do it only for you, sharing that knowledge and sharing that wealth of knowledge, which is the NF-CERT sort of creed, if you will. It makes sense, as you said. Having a person like me sitting at the center of the web, in quotation marks, to gather the data and share the knowledge and share the analysis makes sense. However, I'm a scarce resource. So that means my bandwidth is sometimes tied up because I have all these what we call a production line of quarterly threat assessment and other stuff that I do that are it's in the schedule. So that means if I get ad hoc requests or requests for information, RFIs, I really need to start prioritizing and discussing, because I can do this, but that means something will be skewed or won't be either as high quality or not delivered on time. And you have to deliver on time, always. And they expect a certain quality. So prioritization, again, really heavily part of the intelligence process, where you have to prioritize your resources based on the requirements from your stakeholders. Your key stakeholders always need to be happy, and you can never say, I can't do that. You always have to. So that's basically our goal, making sure that our key stakeholders are happy and that they can deliver whatever they need to their stakeholders. So when I deliver to risk analysts, they deliver to the chief risk officer. When I deliver to the CISO, he or she might have to do presentation for the board or for the rest of the C-suite. I need to make sure that I understand what is it that my key stakeholder needs from me, and what is it that he or she needs to do with that. Because if I know that, I can tailor and reduce all the noise and the chaff, and make sure that I deliver specifically what they need. And that means I'm focused. You use the resource, i.e. me, in the best and the best way. So I'm not diving into rabbit holes and doing stuff that I shouldn't do, basically. Yeah.
Of all the members that I've talked with, and I've spoken with a lot of your members, they're all super duper duper happy with what you're doing.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
And Morten, Tande, for listening to this, you better take care of Freddy, because if you don't, he's coming here. Well, we would love to have you at least. Freddy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope this made sense, guys. But we're just ranting and having a good time here. So,
it's really, everything you're saying is super awesome, and I learned a lot.
You're welcome.
We'll see you around.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Have a good day. Bye bye.